All right, so hello and welcome to the TEDxYouth at KYUEM Debate Showcase 2022, everybody. My name is Munir Muhammad, and I'll be your chairperson for this round. Allow me to introduce to you the esteemed adjudicators for our round today. First, we have Wan Christina bin Wan Izahan Zamiri, then Marvin Boon Chan Hin, and Amma Husni bin Muhammad Hiswandi. Next, I would like to introduce our timekeeper, Azim Shahmi. The motion for our debate today is this House believes that humans' innate need to believe in a person and our causes are destructive rather than constructive. The government side is from College Yayasan UEM. Their Prime Minister is Afiq Lukman. The Deputy Prime Minister is Teo Chan Wen. And the government whip is Ui Jayi Jenny. And the opposition in this debate is from Institute Sinaran. Their Prime Minister will be Pravina Anastasia Baskaran. The Deputy Prime Minister is Althea Grace Javino. And the opposition whip is Ryan Reynolds Swivel. Before we begin the debate, I'd like to have a brief reminder of our rules today. Each speech should be 7 minutes long. A message will be typed in chat by our timekeeper at the first minute, indicating the start of points of information for the floor, and at the 6th minute to indicate the end of points of information. No points of information can be outside of that, in the end of the speech. The reply speech should be 4 minutes long, and no points of information may be offered during the reply speech. So now, please join me. Government Prime Minister Afiq Lokman to the floor to open.
Hi, I'm visible.
Yep, you are.
All right, thank you. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. First off, an initial urge falls around with the cultural or traditional body. Person or cause most likely refers to a glorified body, perhaps to do with religious, cultural, or heroic aspects, but regardless is seen as a form of virtue, body of hope. Next, I would like to define destructive and constructive. The phrase refers to the fact that if we were to put hope upon a set body, this will create harms in mentality, perhaps other tangible forms of harms, but mentality primary harm, considering that we are talking about humans, natural herd mentality. So these will be the grounds in which we, as side government, is debating on. Moving straight to our case stance, I want to strongly clarify to the panel and the opposition team that we do not disregard the fact that this idea is able to bring constructivism in some form. Firstly, it is itself that proves that both destructiveness and constructiveness exist within status quo in the world of today's debate. However, our aim as proposition today is to ultimately prove that the destruction that is caused through believing in a separate body is immensely greater than a little bit of constructivism that side opposition brings to light. So please understand that we as government concede to the fact that although constructivism is mutually exclusive, take into notice that our role today is solely to prove the harms of the motion and how they outweigh the good. What we believe in as side proposition is that the belief in a separate body, whether it be a person or cause, or whether it be in the religious, cultural, tribal, or glory genre, we think that putting your hopes in someone other than yourself is a narrative. Unfortunately, is unpredictable goodwill. In many scenarios, people find themselves in times of chaos and turmoil, as the body they believe in can turn out to be the one that is negatively affecting them, perhaps in the form of emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, or simply self-deception. You may say that we are looking at the worst case scenario, but it isn't. This is reality, and it does already happen in the status quo. The fact that this already happens proves that this burden is lost or as well. We think that this is only on the surface of our case. I provide you with mainly cases just to show you the amount of harm from the act of believing in others, and we have classified our arguments as examples as twofold. One being tangible harm, which is what I will be talking about today, and another being intangible harms, which is what my Deputy Prime Minister will bring on. Next, I'll be moving to markets. On the top of the impertinent point of tangible consequences of putting your hopes in another person or cause. Branch out into a variety of issues, financially, physically, and so much more. A way that this can be issue financially is through the exploitations of the public's money. For example, when a movement or cause asks its followers to donate sums of money in a way to help fight the cause, the level of trust and worship the people have for the movement will encourage them to do so. However, this allows the body to exploit the money they receive through methods such as embezzlement and fraud. An example of this is the 1MDB crisis in our own country, Malaysia. This example is viable because it involved people trusting a larger body, in this case, the government, to support a cause. And the cause being One Malaysia Development Berhad. The people were manipulated into trusting the government when they said that they would help, develop the country and help the people, but only for the trust to be broken, resulting in billions of currency being embezzled into their private accounts. Another example that can be shown through existence, that can be shown is through the existence of cults which display the acts of extremism. Over the course of history, there have been numerous accounts of cults such as the KKK and the People's Temple. The People's Temple was a cult in Indiana who died because of their leader who manipulated themselves. The people that died involved children, women, and men, all being threatened to drink Kool-Aid mixed with cyanide, which proved to be fatal, or the other option was to get shot. Another example is the KKK. The KKK still exists today, and it is known as a white supremacist and a very heavily right-wing organization, which in the past and throughout the entirety of its history has demonstrated acts of murder and other forms of extreme torture, such as lynching. Therefore, I would like to show you that there are many tangible harms such as manipulation and breach of trust that create lasting negative effects which overwhelm the positives of being in a cultural body. I would like to also clarify that we are not denying that there are aspects of constructivism in the idea of following and believing in a cause or person. However, we also strongly believe that the deconstructivism very strongly overwhelms these factors. And with that, I end my speech. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Government Prime Minister. I would now like to invite the Opposition Prime Minister, Pravina Anastasia Bhaskaran, to open their case for the opposition side.
Hi, sorry, I had internet connection issues.
Yep, that's no worries.
Right. So, Chair, as humans...
Sorry, is your camera on? Or...
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine, it's fine. Just by the way, if your internet connection is very laggy, I suggest that you can switch off your camera if it helps with the connection.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think I'll just leave it on for now.
Okay, that's fine.
Chair, as humans, we depend on each other. There are tens, hundreds, thousands, dependent on technically might be possible if a person is destructive. There are destructive people, that may be true, but no one exits the room with a destructive innate need to be destructive rather than constructive. First, let us define emotion. Innate can be understood as behavior that's genetically hardwired in a human. So from there, we can understand this need to believe is coded in our DNA, something that is not developed once we start venturing into this world. Yet as something that has been in our nature, our parents' nature, and even in our ancestors' nature. We as humans, when we believe in other people and causes, more harm can be done than good. Throughout the course of history, there may have been some ups and downs, but at the end of the day, good will always prevail. This is a sentiment that is reflected in fiction as well, which is proven by the saying that art imitates life, where we are always rooting for the good guy to win because it is in our core to believe in the good and condemn the bad. We live in a world where every day you may see untasteful events happening, such as wars, laws being passed that harm people rather than benefit them, or people being arrested for crimes that they do not commit. However, all of the people who act terribly, every single one of them is a product of social conditioning. It's a product of their upbringing. It's proof of how in nature versus nurture. Sometimes it is the nurturing that triumphs, but we must never forget that in human nature, in our nature, we were always meant to believe that trusting others and the way the world works around us is good, and nothing short of that. When humans believe and act on our intrinsic gut feeling that to believe and hope in others is good, then we are able to rise above. We are able to rise to the top and we are able to benefit from this. So there is no need to shift the way that we were created. Giving into the good and choosing to go back to our roots to believe that we are all inside of us, that we are all good people, will make our lives way better in the long run, and we have nothing, absolutely nothing to lose from it. Before I move on to my first point, I would like to rebut the Prime Minister of the government's earlier points. Prime Minister, you said that sometimes trusting in people or giving into the innate need to believe that trusting in others or in movements and causes may not be good because it may be unstable and safe. But that's why we do build trust in other people as well, is so that we can learn from our experiences and we can learn from our mistakes. We must remember that street smarts or intelligence and our innate need to believe and trust in other people and causes, they are not mutually exclusive. So through all of our mistakes, we can learn from this and we can learn who to trust and who not to trust. So it is from there that the more we experience, the more we will learn, and we will learn how to identify genuine sources to put your trust in. Audience, with that, I will be moving on to my first point, which is that humans have an innate need to believe in movements or causes, especially social movements, that will steer us towards the end of the divide of the human race, and it will plant the seeds of empathy in us, which allows us to fight for others and the rights that they deserve. Each of us are vastly different from one another, and each of us were put on this earth with different backgrounds, growing at different paces, and growing up with different people to be different people. By relearning how constructive it is rather than destructive to trust in other people, we can we have seen a massive resurgence in the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, where people of all races all across the globe from different countries such as Uganda, China, Japan, Indonesia, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, and so many more countries, how they have all decided to come together because they have learned how to build trust in other people and empathize. And this causes them to fight for others, even though they don't experience these issues for themselves. They know that it is wrong for other people to experience these issues. And by trusting in these causes and movements, it encourages them to fight for other people. So it encourages us to not only blindly accept what we have been given, it opens our eyes to, injustices other people have faced. And we all together as a collective, we try to fight against that. We try to convince the people in power that something wrong has occurred and that we should fight against it so it doesn't happen again. So another example of people being able to empathize due to their innate need to trust in others is through the March for Our Lives movement that took place on March 24th, 2018, which is a youth-led movement pushing the American government to end the epidemic of gun violence. Rallies such as these, they don't just consist of survivors of gun violence, they consist of other people as well, other people who do not need to be survivors of gun violence to fight for people. Just because they may not have gone through what these people have gone through doesn't mean that they do not know how to empathize, and that does not mean that they do not trust in these movements, and that they do not trust that these movements will eventually move the government to enact the change so that other lives will be better, so that parents don't have to worry about sending their kids to school and worry about them not coming home. So even with the Women's March, you can see that it's never just women being involved in these marches. There are people of other genders involving themselves in these marches. And you can see that with all of these injustices due to just the nature of who you were born as, with what you were born as, it just shows that, people can come together, that building trust helps others to empathize. And through this empathy, people will learn how to fight for each other. It will encourage them to believe more in the causes that they fight for. It will encourage people to lend their voices to people who need them the most, to make sure that eventually a place which is, better for everyone is created. So ladies and gentlemen, with social movements such as these, which functions to establish a mass platform of action for the underrepresented, for the marginalized, for the people who are just, at a disadvantage in general, it acts to spread awareness. And the reason why movements like these have such a large following is because as humans, we were born, as it is in our nature, to empathize with others due to the trust that we build in them and in the trust that we build in these causes that surround us. Because by trusting others and forming bonds with them, we learn to care for and about them. And even if we do not know each other on a personal level, we do know that no one should be treated unequally because of their race, gender, nor should they have to worry about having to put their lives in danger to do an everyday task. And so many more. We believe that by standing with others, being able to empathize with them, fighting for what we believe in, and speaking out so everyone can live a fair life will eventually improve the quality of life for the world and everyone in it. So we can all live in the peace and harmony that we have always been dreaming of since day one. With that, I would like to reassert the fact that we, the opposition, firmly believe that the trust we were born with for the people and movements around us, for the causes around us, were coded into us to benefit ourselves and others, and not to destroy one another. Our intrinsic nature to believe in others constructs the wave fronts made by humanity when we learn to empathize with one another due to this trust, and this in turn will strengthen our faith in the social movements we believe in and fight for, creating a stronger chain link that will destroy the boundaries put in place by times past. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Opposition Prime Minister. Now I would like to present the government's Deputy Prime Minister, TEDxYouth, to continue the case for the government side.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right. So I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So Team Opposition painted a good picture of reality, of how society is composed of good people, where people fight for others and they're all kind. However, let me tell you here what reality really is. So snap back to reality. Mankind is selfish. And that is why we need to believe in ourselves rather than others. So let me begin by giving a few rebuttals. So what the leader opposition said was that we need to depend on others, and that no man is an island, and that good will always prevail. However, let me tell you that all this, while this really does bring constructive effect ourselves rather than other people. So first point, why believe in others? Yes, we should believe in others. It's in humans' innate nature to believe in others, and it does lead to constructive effect. Team government does not deny that. However, in the long run, this, as what my Prime Minister had already mentioned, is unstable. We do not know who these organizations are, who these people are, what are their motives, what are they truly fighting for. And these already, what we have proven, has led to financial harms and also the loss of many lives, such as the case of the Indiana, where the Prime Minister has already brought up. And all these are not registered by Team Opposition. And following that, I would also like to bring out a point that believing in others actually cripple yourself. When you believe in others, you actually encourage yourself to forfeit your own power and your rights. You let others control your mindset, and you become reliant on other bodies, other institutions that you don't know, such as the cults. For example, you let them lead your mindset, lead your goals, when you yourself don't have that clear objective or clear mindset of how you should direct your own life. You put your hopes and your dreams on others. And imagine how this can all fall down quickly. Besides the tangible harms, which has already been explained, there are also intangible harms where your whole life is destroyed just because you follow others, you believe in others. Bankruptcy, crimes, pedophilia, suicide, and all these are distractions to society, which are far more greater in effect compared to the constructive effect brought about by believing in others or other institutions. Besides, we would also like to question why people should believe in themselves. So let us first ask ourselves why people don't believe in themselves and choose to believe in others and let others guide them. They don't believe in themselves because they think that they are not good enough. They feel hopeless, they feel lost, and they need someone to guide them. However, and that is why team government is here to address this problem. Instead of choosing to believe in a religious group or institution, we are saying that these individuals should actually go to rehabilitation to restore their right kind of mindset. Like for example, when someone lost their belief in themselves and need guidance, they seek the help of therapists. And seeking the help of therapists isn't because you want the therapist to help you. It's because you are seeking to help yourself, to make yourself believe in yourself. Yes, take.
So are you saying that when we go to therapy, we're not believing in the therapist? Isn't that believing in other people as well?
All right. Thank you for your question. When we go to the therapist, it is because we trust that the therapist will help us to believe in ourselves, you know. So when we go to the therapist, we trust that a therapist will help us, but then it is the therapist will only help us by making ourselves believe in ourselves. Do you get the point? All right. So moving on. So what my point was saying is that we should not surrender to external forces. Just now, I would like to clarify that the rehabilitation and going to the therapist, it's that we go to the therapist is not to help, is not wanting the therapist to help us in a way that it is not because we want to believe in the therapist, it's because we want to believe in ourselves. Okay, following on, it is not the job of team government to actually prove that the destruction caused by all these caused by individuals believing in these causes or persons that should be mitigated. So it is team opposition's job to prove that. So take it with a grain of salt. So it's inherent in human nature to actually believe in others and to believe in others and put their hopes and dreams on others. But in the end, the impact of the destruction far outweighs all the benefits it brings. You are all you need, and why believe in others when you can believe in yourselves? And with that, so proud to propose. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Government Deputy Prime Minister. I would now like to please welcome the Opposition Deputy Prime Minister, Alpia Grace Javino, to continue the debate for the opposition side.
Hello, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I would like to rebut the Prime Minister of the government. His point was that believing in people is unstable, but we learn from our mistakes and learn which genuine sources to trust. Should one experience distort your whole life from distrusting other figures in your life, then it will affect you. So that's why we need to trust in other people and believe in other people so we can learn from our mistakes, again, like I mentioned before, and build up on that. And I would like to rebut the Deputy Prime Minister of the government. Realistically, no one can be pessimistic. No one is born pessimistic and non-dependent on others anyway. And if you remain pessimistic your whole life by just believing in yourself and not others, that's selfish. And I don't think anyone is inherently selfish. Other than that, people believing in yourself and not others, that's what she said, and it's not, but it's not exclusive. You can believe in yourself and other people. And when you believe in yourself, you also believe in other people, like the Women's March. You join because you believe in the cause. You believe in yourself, in your own rights, and hence you believe in other people because you all join the cause to fight for the same thing. And therefore you all believe in the same thing. So isn't that believing in other people as well? You just proved our point. And it's constructive. It's not herd mentality because fighting together as a community is not selfish and therefore believe in other people. And again, We are not born non-dependent like babies. As infants, we need our caretakers to care for us to survive. Moving on to my first point. Believing in other people is constructive because it helps us to grow as an individual or as a person. It's also proven through the science of epigenetics. It is scientifically proven that as we are born into this world, we grow up looking for affection and attention. Babies cry when they want to be held. Children look for their parents when they feel upset. And as we grow up, we look for companionship in friends and significant others. It is an innate need, a natural instinct to want to form relationships, to believe in people as we age. And a study by Taker reported the following pathology in children who suffered neglect in the early years. So the first effect of neglect is reduced growth in the left hemisphere, which may lead to depression, increased sensitivity in the limbic system, which can lead to anxiety disorders, and reduced growth in the hippocampus that could contribute to learning and memory impairments. So it's not destructive, it's constructive. Because if we are neglected, if we do not believe in other people, even as infants, it affects our mental health. So this proves that we are naturally inclined to want to form bonds because it's beneficial to us, which links to my next segment of my first point, social connections. It's essential in our daily lives and it prevents isolation and loneliness. Tell me, how many times have you found yourself feeling down because you were lonely? And how many times have you found yourself feeling happy and uplifted when you were amongst the people you love? Even the most introverts of introverts search for a sense of belonging. Again, it is a natural instinct. If I can't convince you, then look within yourself. We all have people we trust and believe in. If you say that it's destructive, then you're going against every single relationship you had in your life, every single good relationship. Are you saying that those good relationships were destructive rather than constructive? Have you never learned from them? Just as natural as it is to believe in people, it's natural for us to face obstacles along the way. And facing these obstacles just builds trust. It builds and builds. It's more constructive than it is destructive. We meet people, we have falling outs, and then we meet other people. Because every cloud has a silver lining after all. And to build trust is to build our individuality. And it also boosts happiness and reduces stress, as aforementioned. And the benefits obviously outweigh the cons. So we build upon our beliefs. So it constructs us to be a better person. Other than that, it also benefits our professional careers. By believing in other people, we network for support. It's a mutually beneficial system. Even in professional situations, we need to believe in our business partners, our workers, even our bosses to pay us. If we don't believe them, then where will we go? Networking is very important because the connections allow for us to benefit from the help that we receive. There is not one company that doesn't have connections with other companies. It's beneficial because it allows businesses to grow. And it also allows for an expanded clientele. Again, it's constructive rather than destructive, because if your customers don't believe in you and vice versa, where's your business going to go? How will our economy grow? It will all remain idle, stagnant, if we don't believe in one another. Even in schools and colleges and universities, we put our beliefs in people in order to benefit from it. We put our beliefs in our lecturers, and our teachers and classmates so that we can grow as an individual and make our connections as when we graduate. This is something that we've all experienced and benefited from. So you'd be lying if you said that it's not constructive. It's a matter of fact. Moving on to my second point, it builds trust for communities. Trust and emotional safety go hand in hand. It's something that it's two peas in a pod. We need to feel validated and secure in order to thrive. Believing in people allows for us to build communities. It's already proven through our histories, because how did we get here? Our ancestors believed in people, built communities, and here we are. Just like the Indus and the Mesopotamia civilizations had relations because they believed in one another and therefore benefited from it. And then they they benefited from it because it was constructive. And when shared interest or identity and trust exists, it's easier for people to start engaging with one another as well as their environment. Another point is that teamwork is key, as proved by the Hawthorne effect, where when we believe in our teammates and coworkers, it increases the production rate. And another thing is religion and race. In our religion, everyone knows religion. when we have shared faith, we have the shared mutual respect, and we find comfort in our communities and fellow congregations. When we have shared ideas, experiences, or identities, it builds trust and boosts our confidence in one another, and it allows for us to evolve. And community creates altruism. Altruism breeds selfless acts and neighborly acts, and therefore it's beneficial. It constructs us as a community. And race. Racial identity creates pride. Ethnic minorities find security in mutual beliefs or traditions. Like, community members will need to feel validated. And this is even proven in our daily lives. For instance, I, as a Kadazan woman, will find comfort when I am celebrating festivals such as the Kaamatan Festival with my community, or even.
Hi, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
All right, thank you. I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. As whip speaker today, let me jump right into my key clarifications and emphasis on our stance as side proposition, right, or side government, right? I want to make it very, very, very clear that our sole role today as government is to prove that the destruction caused by believing within another body outweighs and overwhelms the constructive aspects that side opposition brings to the table today. This debate should have been about that, and we think that the metrics to win is to show that the impact of destruction scars humanity immensely over the impact of constructivism, right? We believe that this debate can be won by side government if we can prove not the number and statistics of destruction happening compared to constructive things, but rather how the sole impact of one destructive case results in traumatizing society for millennia and trumps the impact of 100 constructive cases, right? You may see that as a hyperbole or exaggeration, but we speak the truth of history from what we've seen from cults, scamming charitable bodies, and glorified individuals who actually have terrible characters, right? And all these examples have been given by my PM and DPM, right? Rather than the deputy leader of opposition from opposition side just saying that it outweighs, the benefits outweighs the disadvantages without actually giving any solid case study on how this acts, right? When we actually prove that cults like the People's Temple actually show that we've been traumatized, mankind has been traumatized by it for ages, and that proves that it's this like believing in other people and a separate body can be actually the impact of this destruction can be like tenfold more terrible and more impactful than the impact of constructive cases, right? We might believe in the prioritization of your hopes to be aligned. We also believe in the prioritization of your hopes to be aligned within yourself if we were to mitigate this destruction at all, despite that not being part of our burden as side government. However, PM touched on this. Panel see that side comes with constructivism, right? Thus, see that we can provide an alternative for this, which is that we believe in a narrative that mankind runs on self-sufficiency and self-values over the reliance on a separate body that has been proven to be unstable and unpredictable. Side opposition cannot take this point for themselves because they believe in blind trust. See that when you believe in a separate body, you welcome the risk of internalizing the idea of self-deception and ostracizing the core moral value of self-reliance and logical thinking. I'll take it later. As many cases have proved to be extremely harmful to oneself and the others around them, right? So let's analyze both teams' cases. Proposition or government fights on the grounds of reality in which we accept and understand the fact that society is not as wholesome as we want it to be. Society is not filled with angels and good people. We can back this up simply with the mere existence of cruel criminals like serial killers, sex offenders, and everyone else, right? So opposition fights on the ground of a fantasy world. The entire case is based off this assumption that people are great and everyone is wonderful, that we can blindly trust people, as this establishes empathy, which is actually a self-core value, right? We think that as great as it is to help others, we need to have logic, and that really only comes from yourself. However, understand that what this implies is that opposition concedes to the fact that our harms and destruction exist, and they are willing to bite the bullet for their empathy and social love. But the question is, are they biting off more than they can chew? They also had zero engagement in mitigating these harms. Proposition already agrees that both constructivism and destruction exist. It's mutually exclusive. But what gives government the win is that we address how we can mitigate the harms of destruction where they did not, and also showed how we can still have constructivism in our side with less of the risk. And it's really too late for the third speaker of opposition side to really introduce any new points in mitigating these harms, right? But before I move on to my rebuttals, yes, I'll take the POI. 1, 2, Three.
Right?
Okay.
All right. Sorry. My
Sorry,
mic
yep.
was delayed. You said that not believing in government is not beneficial because we want to self-persevere. Then what about our Merdeka Day? Didn't we believe in our leader to lead Malaysia as a nation?
We believed in ourselves first of all, right? We had our own empathy. We believe in ourselves because we think that we are a specific race. We believe in ourselves that we know we don't want to deal with, the lack of independence. We don't want to be for ourselves. We're not blindly trusting any leaders, right? If we were to follow with your blind trust, then we would still be under British colonization to this day. We would still believe in another power because that's your blind trust, right? They were doing good for us. They were helping us develop a lot. So we could have just blindly trusted them, but we believed in ourselves and fought for our own independence, right? And that's really only just one example. Again, your team has still yet to really engage with any of the destruction and harms that my Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister has said, right? You really, really need to engage with the cases that we have said in the case of financial exploitation, in the case of emotional manipulation, in the case of cults and, extremist groups. So now I'll leave the rest of the analysis to my reply speaker. So let me look into my refutation and I'll do this issue based. On the first issue that I want to talk about is blind trust. Let's talk about how eligible is this, right? How great is this society? How amazing and how fantastical is this society that we can blindly trust everyone, right? So it's not. Look into reality. We have bad people. So what opposition is doing is they're conceding to the fact that they are willing to take the risk of several crimes and extremist groups occurring in society for the fact that they have this minuscule chance of, finding social love together. So, but first of all, we're not saying as government team that this isn't true. We're not saying that blind trust is terrible and doesn't exist and always leads to bad things, right? This is what opposition seems to assume from us. We're not saying that. My Prime Minister, in his first speech, already concedes the fact that constructivism exists in our world. The issue today, the metric for us to win, is the fact that side opposition didn't mitigate any of the harms that we brought up, right? The fact they didn't address any of these issues show that they are unable to show that destruction does not outweigh constructivism, right? Second issue. They say that when you believe in yourself, you believe in other causes, that we are contradicting ourselves. But first, you talk about blind trust. But again, believing in yourself is at least ensuring that you know what you want and not relying on others, right? Again, that is not our role as government to prove. Like my DPM has said, take it with a grain of salt for our reasons. Once again, as I have said over and over again, it's not our job, but it is opposition's job to mitigate the harms that we have brought up. And last of all, they said that we said all social relations are destructive. We never said that. We already said social relations are good and blind trust might lead to constructive cases, right?
And I hear they say that it is a cause. Okay, social movements and independence are linked together. They are almost alike and they can be categorized under one roof, and that is cost. And then my Deputy Prime Minister also said that believing in others build connection and also build communities. Okay, I like to get down to the fundamental basis. Okay, from the beginning of our existence, we were wired to connect. Okay, I'll prove this. When we are born, we cry. And when we cry, chemicals are induced in our mothers and they are able to gain the ability to breastfeed. This is a connection and it's intangible. Okay, connection also has a few benefits, that is, which are enhanced mood and lower the blood pressure. Okay, third point is self-improvement. Okay, I agree we tend to trust less as we age. Lies and false accusations contributed to this. Hence, we tend to lock ourselves up. We don't believe in anyone or anything because we are scared. But what if we succumb to our human innate need to believe in others? Doing something hard is difficult. I'll give ladies and gentlemen an analogy. You and a sprinter compete in a 100-meter race. Who will win? Of course, the sprinter will win because the sprinter trains. But what if you also train? There is a chance that you're able to beat the sprinter. So now I'll tell you, training in order to win and believing in something is the same. The result both leads to one, which is we become stronger. That is self-improvement. Okay, now I'd like to rebut side government's prime ministers, where the prime minister said believing in bodies has the body has a tendency to exploit our money. However, most of the time, this does not work. People believe in warnings from others. So, for example, their friends, they got robbed into this one activity that they got lied to, they got scammed. So their friend would tell this person that that activity, that progress, that body is a scam, and that person will believe the other, and this will provide constructive implications. It's a benefit for the person that believe in their friend to avoid themselves from being scammed, just like how their friend did. So this is a good thing. Okay, so second, the Prime Minister assumed people will believe in cults that are detrimental, such as the KKK cult. Okay, this is only a small fraction of people. Most people believe in other things. Okay, so for example, the cult, we cannot assume, most people believe that the cults are detrimental because more people believe that the cults are bad. The people can think for themselves whether the cults are bad or not. So those people that believe in the cults, it is not about belief, but it's about their mindset. They believe in something that's bad because they themselves are bad. And I also agree that mankind, not all of them are good. But however, side government also assume that all mankind are selfish. I hear they say that assumption is wrong. Okay. I would like to rebut the Deputy Prime Minister of side government, where they say Deputy Prime Ministers talk about taking risks. However, from the opposition side, we view taking risks as a step to learn. Taking risks is also necessary for improvement and is also a good thing, and it also outweighs the bad things. Deputy Prime Minister of side government also gave example of the destructive implications that will cause if we believe in others, that is the losses of life, cripple ourselves, and whole life will be destroyed. However, you need other people you need to believe in others. You need to learn to believe in others first than to believe in yourself. For example, imagine if your ideals and your beliefs are actually wrong in the view of society. Wouldn't that in itself cripple yourself? That's the question. Okay, the Deputy Prime Minister of side government also said that in order to help believe in ourselves, for those that can't believe in themselves, we should see a therapy and go to rehabilitation. I would like to attack this argument, and that the side opposition believe that seeing therapists is we believing in the therapist's ability. We're believing in the therapist be denied. If we go to the therapist, we go to the doctors because we believe that they can cure our diseases. We believe in medical treatment because they can help us.
UI, please.
Accept it.
What you said just now about we go to the therapist to actually help ourselves believe in ourselves is exactly what team government is trying to propose. Thank you.
All right, I'll clarify more on that. Therapists, we believe, I think that government does not get the point that therapist ability is something that we should believe in. If we do not believe in the therapist, we ask the question, would you go to the therapist to get treatment if you do not believe in their ability? You won't, right? Because it is a waste of money and time. Moreover, not everybody can afford therapists, and that is a bad thing because nobody gets the accessibility to therapists. You can believe in in other people is not, you can believe in yourself and other people, it is not exclusive. Therapists can't be found easily in other places, and it is mostly not found in less developed countries. Now, I would like to touch on what the government whip said. The government assumed that side opposition believes in blind trust, and that we think believing in others usually correlates with blind trust. However, I should dare say that it is not impossible to blindly trust ourselves, as I myself, we, the oppositions, are also guilty of this, and everybody are also guilty of this. With that, I will gladly say that the side opposition has clarified, and we hereby stand by the motion that we believe that believing in others has more constructive implications compared to the destructives. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Opposition Whip. Now that we've heard all three speakers from both teams, there will be 3 minutes allocated for the preparation of your reply speeches, starting now. All right then, seeing as the 3 minutes has elapsed, just a reminder that you'll only have 4 minutes for your reply speeches, and that no points of information will be entertained during these speeches. So, without further ado, I shall now invite the Prime Minister's speaker from the opposition to make their first reply.
I would like to start by emphasizing some of the points brought up by the government team, which is, first of all, humans' innate need to trust in other people and causes is unstable and safe. But then, as we grow, we learn and we through these experiences, we learn who to trust and who not to trust. So through that, we're able to, recognize genuine sources that we can trust. And just because we have one bad experience, maybe two, that doesn't mean we should just, go through the rest of our lives not trusting other people. Because even if you think that way, that would be like a sad reality to live in. And frankly, it just wouldn't be sustainable. You can't go through the rest of your life alone. It's true when I said that no man is an island. And the government team, they keep on pushing this agenda of, self-perseverance. But the reason why you want to persevere is because there are things that you believe in and things that you hope for. Because otherwise, why would you still be here? Why would you still be fighting to live if you had nothing to believe in, if you didn't have, causes and people to trust in? And even with self-perseverance, you can never do everything by yourself. You always need help from others. And if you were to go about life not trusting others, you would simply be going through life without getting help. And from that, you wouldn't be able to fulfill your own needs. And even with that, there are crimes and extremist groups, which is what the government team keep on pointing out. But why do you have to bring up the most extreme cases? Even this shows that, frankly, even this shows that, throughout history, yes, there have been bad sides to blindly putting trust in causes and other people. But through this, we learn through history. And from there, we learn and we grow and we get these experiences. And from there, we will learn that not everyone is out to scam you, not everyone is out to rob you of your money. And if you were to walk around your life believing these things, it just would be harmful to you as well. And even with self-perseverance, believing in others would not cripple yourselves. And who said that trusting in yourself and trusting in others is, they're not two completely different things. Both can happen at the same time, Just because you trust other people doesn't mean you don't trust yourself. Just like in this debate, even with, our team, the opposition and the government, you do trust in your teammates to carry yourselves throughout this competition. And when you trust in yourselves, you don't not trust your teammates to not bring out your own opinions. If anything, this is about bringing out your own opinions. So you do trust in other people and you do trust in yourself. So even with the act of this debate in itself, this belief in other people, it's brought out by each of the teams in their respective debates. So now I would just like to strengthen some of the opposition's points. So first of all, we said that believing in other people and causes, it brings out empathy in other people. It's shown by previous movements, Black Lives Matter, the Women's March, March for Our Lives. Through all of these movements, it shows that we have the innate capability to care for others because we trust in them. And as you said, we trust in ourselves to trust other people, to come together so we can all fight people in higher places of power, so we can change the status quo, so we can build a better world for everyone, so that no one is treated unequally, so that everyone has the same right, so that everyone can live a fair life where, injustice doesn't have to be forever. So this is what these movements are for. This is what we have these movements for, to fight for other people and fight for ourselves as well. And other than that, by building community, we get to grow as an individual and as a person, as we are multifaceted, in schools, in our jobs, in our families, we have like different sides of us, and every place we go, we are surrounded by people with different experiences. And so through this, we'll learn more from other people, and we'll learn from these experiences, and we'll add them to our own. And from there, we will grow, we will become better people just by being around other people, because we learn from them. And from there, we keep on learning and growing ourselves. And finally, when you trust in other people, you build trust and community as well. And this helps us to be secure in our own identities, and in our own identities, especially minorities, where, it's in the name, minorities, where you feel like you're at the brink of the society or like the community that you live in. When you have people around you that are similar to you or have similar experiences, you feel like you belong, and this helps you, you don't feel alone, and you can go through the rest of your life knowing that no matter what happens, you do belong in the place where you are, as long as you have the people around you who are similar to you, know what you go through, and who understand you. And even with, how like superstars, they have fans, and like with fandoms, like with BTS, their fandom, the armies, they have raised money for Black Lives Matter, 1 million to be exact, and for COVID relief in India. And there are many ways to build trust, which is like, in the ways we all trust each other, such as the the farm bills in India, where all of these farmers got together and they decided to trust each other to fight for their rights. That's all.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much for that reply speech, Prime Minister. I would now like to call upon the government's Deputy Prime Minister to present their reply speech.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's start off by looking at both worlds that emerged at the end of this debate and try to understand how our world is better and why team government has won this debate. An overview of their world. In team opposition's world is about blindly trusting others. When things go wrong, you learn from your mistakes and experiences and believe that things will actually get better and you can avoid all these kinds of bad scenarios. We rebutted about how the tangible and intangible harms caused, such as financial bankruptcy, the torture, the murdering of others, and the intractable, which is the loss of lives. And yet this has been failed to address by team opposition as to how all these losses, all these destructive effects are undermined by the good effects that are brought about by believing in others. They also brought about, in their world, there's also the need for social connection and the dependent on others, and we rely on believing in others to build communities. And team government never denies that. But again, we emphasize that we do not live in a perfect world. There are crimes and bad people. So this is the consequences if you live in their world: blind trust and believing that the world is utopia. Let's escape their world and look into what our world is like. So our world focuses on looking into reality. We don't assume that our world is perfect. Society is not wholesome. There are crimes and bad people. We accept that. And while there are both constructive and destructive effects from believing in others or causes, which is very subjective at most cases, we cannot put our trust to others wholly. There are tangible harms of financial, such as finance or cults, and there are also intangible harms where you focus on believing in others and let other people destroy your hopes and goals. You put everything on others, you rely on them, and this shows that how the bad effect actually outweighs the good effect. So we team government in team opposition's world. In team government's world, we have given you that we do not blindly trust others. We provided you with an alternative of believing in ourselves. So humans have good instincts and we do trust ourselves. But what team government has proven is that the destructive effect far outweighs what the constructive effect of believing in others. Yes, we do believe that there's good in society, there's good people, and that when you believe in others, you can build a community and build a good social connection that will help you and help you in your life. However, what we are saying here is that there are destructive effects that far outweighs the number of goods. The impact that it brings is far more deadly and worse than we can imagine. We see reality. Team government see reality and accepts the bad effects that happens. That it is far worse than trusting others. You can if you believe in yourself, and that is why I propose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Government Deputy Prime Minister, for your reply speech. And thank you to all the speakers for your participation in this session. We have now come to the end of the debate. Adjudicators, you may go into your breakout room to deliberate. Debaters, please wait in this meeting. All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Our adjudicators have come to a verdict. Let us please welcome them back to announce the winners of this session's debate, as well as some feedback for our debaters.
Hi, before we start, am I audible and visible?
Yep,
Yes.
you are.
All right, perfect. I'm sorry I couldn't get the background because I'm on my phone. Is that fine? Or do I need to fetch the background?
Nope, it's all right.
All right, thanks. Okay, so first things first, congratulations to both teams for reaching it to this level. It is a very intellectual debate that we heard, and it's a very interesting debate, as this is a value judgment type of motion where we outweigh if which benefits outweighs which harm. So overall, it is a very good debate, I would say. It matured very well, and I really like listening to it. So before that, this is how my oral adjudication is going to look like. First, I'm going to give the call. I'm going to set myself to about 7 minutes to give oral adjudication, maybe less, due to our time constraint. I'm going to give you the call. I'm going to tell you why we made the call, and I'm going to give you reasons as to why this team stands above this team. So this call or this verdict is a unanimous decision. So it's 3-0. All judges have voted that we would give the win to Team Government, College Yayasan UAM. So congratulations, Team Government, for a really, really good stance and good debate. So first things first, I'm going to tell you how this debate went and how this debate matured. So in the very beginning, the PM said that set of the case wall, it was good. However, I still don't understand why there is a clarification. You say that, no, we're not denying constructivism. However, we are proving that deconstructivism overwhelms constructivism in this case. However, as this debate matured, it really developed well on how you guys proved that what you meant actually was these two elements of constructivism and destructivism can exist in both worlds, which is very good. Because when you read the motion, the common ground that you guys need to agree on is that it's humans' innate need to believe, which both teams agreed on that basis. So now we are just comparing which is destructive, which is more destructive, and which is more constructive. So now to the reasons as to why we gave sort of government away. So taking from my panels, so my panels have said this is a wrap up of what my panels want me to give to you guys. So side government has more realistic perceptions, and side of opposition has a more good will always prevail type of mentality, which I don't think is wrong. However, if you are capable of proving as to why believing in utopian reality is better than believing in this harsh reality is better for the humanity, or like it's better towards the cause that you are fighting for, which is that it is more constructive, you could have gotten the win. However, you didn't prove that. There was no justification as to why this utopian reality is better to believe in, and it gives more betterment to the mankind. So that's what my panel say. My second panel say that a lot in this debate is that side of opposition did not engage well with side of government, and then there was more of a good dumping type of thing that's happening. So good dumping means that you were just telling us what are the benefits of believing other people. So when that comes without any type of justification, it is hard for us to credit as to why we should give the win to you guys. And even there were engagements, but it was very late into the debate as well. And the engagements were very, I would say, it's like you're just like tickling it instead of slapping them, if that makes sense. It's very surface level. As the sort of government, you guys did a great job on putting up your stance. However, I do believe that if the PM could clearly set up to us the clarification, it would have been better. However, it's still, even your stance is, your case can be carried out really well and immature. Good. However, there's still sometimes you did give a lot of samples and case studies. What you guys didn't do though is that some sort of opposition brought up this. They have this one safety net, which is like learn from people's mistakes. I know it's not your burden to prove that, or people don't learn from mistakes, blah, blah, blah. But when set up kicking on it, you need, like, I think this is their biggest weapon. The safety net thing is their biggest weapon. So you at least touch on it. I think you guys did. I think Jenny did. But I like to hear more justification to it. However, I think that's not big of a margin of error, or it's not a wrong or right thing to do. I just prefer, so that I don't have to doubt on you guys as to, but hey, they haven't talked about the safety net. However, as for other things, you guys engage really well, especially when you guys outweigh all the issues in this debate. So I heard from Jenny, there's the trust and the belief in ourselves and reality, these three things. So deconstructing it is enough. Another thing that side of government can do is that when you bring in sample cases, add in justification, as like, ask yourself, why is this important to the debate? Why is this contributing to the debate? So when it was important, why the panel really needs to listen to this, you kind of tell the panel that because of this sample, we can't prove otherwise. And it's really important to this debate. So just ask yourself these questions, like, why is it true? I always stand by 3 questions to check my samples or my arguments, like, why is it true? Why is it important? And why is it mutually exclusive or necessary? So these 3 questions. However, other than that, I think you guys did really great. And when you come into a POI, just remind yourself that always stick to your stance. Other than that, for side of opposition, I think, like I said, there was lack of justification coming from your side. However, what you guys can do better is that it's not wrong to dump benefits, but it is problematic when you don't tell us why this benefits is relevant to this debate. Because when you just tell me that constructivism, like believing in others, can help to grow an individual, is helping for social connection, but you don't tell me why with these benefits that it is gonna help reduce, or like it weighs more than destructive, the destructiveness that side of government has brought. They have brought a lot of samples, which is like tangible samples, intangible samples, but you didn't engage much on that. And even if you did, I'm gonna give you the best side, you still didn't engage enough. And during the reply speakers, I want everyone to notice in a debate that teams are allowed to bring the worst case scenarios, because that's what you're supposed to do. So it's not wrong for to bring worst case scenarios and bring the extreme scenarios. However, if you don't agree with it, you can challenge it, but sort of opposition didn't challenge it. However, it's not wrong. It is the point to like outweigh best case scenario, worst case scenarios from both sides, and I think you guys did it. And also another last OA that I would give is that if you are stuck somewhere in the line, always ask this even if thing, so that it solidifies your stance. So like, even if this happens, this still happens. So even if there is this harm, we still have another benefit to back up that harm. So other than that, do my panels have anything to say? Maven, Omar?
Honestly, I feel like everything's already been said. It was an enjoyable debate, I'll say that for sure.
Yes, same.
Maven?
It was very interesting.
All right. Okay, so I'm gonna drop down my, because Zikri told me to drop down my personal feedback. So I'm just gonna drop it again to do what Zikri asked me to do. Let's remember. Okay, so I couldn't text everyone. However, on Instagram it's Sunkissed, SUNQI. Thank you everyone, and good luck for your next rounds if you have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for the comments, adjudicators. This session's debate has come
Thank
to
you.
an end, and a bit. Sorry. Okay, never mind. A big thank you to the debaters, adjudicators, timekeepers, and audience members for participating in this session's debate for the TEDxYouth at KYUEM 2022 Debate Showcase. Congratulations, debaters. You are dismissed from this session. And for everyone else, do keep watching as we start our next round of debate very soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome back to the TEDxYouth at KYUEM Debate Showcase 2022. I hope everyone had a great time watching the first round of debate. My name is William and I'll be your chairperson for this following round. Allow me to introduce the esteemed adjudicators for this round. Syed Naufal Al-Saghof bin Syed Albi, Iman Amani binti Azmi, Serafina Chong Sin Yu, and the timekeeper Azim Shang. The motion for today's debate is, this House believes that the citizens' view of their own nation's social, political, and economical climate is the only narrative to be accepted as opposed to external media's portrayals. Now, let me introduce the debaters for this round. The government side is from College Mara Seremban. The Prime Minister is Muhammad Adam Iqbal. The Deputy Prime Minister is Fatin Najwa binti Nur Firdaus Sid. And Government Whip is Amar Zakwan bin Nur Ashar. And the opposition in this debate is from Sunway College. The Prime Minister is Kavishnu Nadaraja. The Deputy Prime Minister is Vigneshwaran Sundrasagar. And the opposition whip is Mio Arif bin Mior Muhammad Farid. Before we begin, here is a brief reminder of the rules. Each speech should be 7 minutes long. The bell will be rung once at the first minute, indicating the start of points of information, or POIs, and at the 6th minute for the end of POI. No POIs can be presented outside of this window. As debaters cannot type in the chat, please open your microphones to ask for POIs. The bell will be rung twice at the 7th minute, indicating the end of the speech. The reply speech should be 4 minutes long. No POIs may be offered during the reply speech. So now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Government Prime Minister, Adam, to the floor to open the debate.
All right, am I audible? All right.
Yes, you're audible.
Whoever controls the media controls the mind. What say you if your mind was controlled by a foreign power interested in vying for control of your country? Good morning, members of the hall, timekeepers. Today, I, as the Prime Minister, shall be arguing in favor of the motion. This House believes that the citizens' view of their own nation's social, political, and economical climate or history is the only narrative to be accepted, as opposed to external media's portrayal. We are in favor, the government sides are in favor of this motion under the rationale that the interpretation of a country's own events should be up to their own citizens, since the direction a nation will move forward in the future is determined by their own citizens themselves. Thus, a narrative on a nation's economical, social, political, and historical climate provided by external media is almost irrelevant to the citizens of said nation. SideGov stands on the side of providing news and narrative relevant to the citizens and populations concerned rather than a foreign country's agenda. With that said, let's define a few things. The definition for view means that a particular way of considering or regarding something, an attitude or opinion. Narrative, meaning a representation of a particular situation or process in such a way as to reflect or conform to an overarching set of aims, values, or agenda. Accepted by meaning of generally believed and regarded as correct, and external media, meaning foreign media and information outlets. From this, we gather that the proof of burden for the opposition is to prove to us that the narrative provided by external media is better and more beneficial for the citizens of a country rather than their own internal media, whilst the proof of burden for the government is to prove that the narrative provided by internal domestic media is more beneficial for the citizens of their own country compared to external media. With that said, how do I prove this proof of burden that the narrative internal domestic media is more beneficial? Well, let me point out to my first point. My first point is that the internal media has a better understanding of the current social, economic, political situation with in-depth knowledge and nuances, rather than external media only knowing things from a surface level. This means that internal media, based on their own countries, have a deeper knowledge of the nuances, opinions, and ground-level facts, and the feelings and sort of opinions of most people of their own citizens and nation.
External media, however, tends to have a certain biased view of another country, usually based on their own country's agenda or their own, or how they view that other nation itself. For example of this is Western media outlets such as Bloomberg and The Guardian continually bashing the People's Republic of China over their high-speed railway project, even though the project has benefited their own people. With 500 miles of railway currently under construction, they criticize those sort of this beneficial high-speed rail project, which interconnects all of the major Chinese cities, as being inefficient and sort of ancient 1950s technology and so on. Another example of this is Western news, particularly The Guardian in 2001, bashing over Lee Kuan Yew, the Singaporean leader, stating him as a soft dictator, where in fact, many Singaporeans viewed him highly as a democratic leader who turned the island nation into the prosperous one it is today. SafeGov wants to point out that the US or liberal democratic model of media, which tends to focus more on foreign countries, which tends to bash other countries, is not a universal standard. The media in other countries play different roles. These roles have grown out of their different historical experiences, their political systems, and their natural temperaments. They represent equally valid functions, which the press fulfills in different environments, different place, different needs, different media, different outcome. This is the basis of what we are trying to show. In the Philippines, for example, before martial law, it was an Asian version of the United States system. The Filipino press enjoyed all the freedoms like the US version of the press, but they failed the Filipino people. How? A widely partisan press, such as the ones in the US, helped the Filipino populations to flood the marketplace with junk and confuse and befuddle the people so that they could not see what their vital interests, what are actually the concerns of the nation were in that developing country. Thus, while the US model of the press is good, maybe for the US or maybe for every other nation, it is not a good model or a good measuring stick to measure other nations with. And it's standard as an applicable model has not been proven. Thus, I rest my case.
Thank you for that speech. Now, please welcome the opposition Prime Minister, Kavish, to open the case for their side.
Problem. Oh my God.
Reminder, Adam, please mute your mic. Thank you.
I hope I'm audible and visible.
Yes, you are audible and visible. Please proceed.
I'll start my speech. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for side government to take this debate, they have to prove to us two things. One, they have to prove to us that external media's portrayal is bad for the country. Two, they have to show us what incentives external media has to portray a country in bad light in the first place. And three, even if they do portray a country in bad light, how is it unjustified and how is it necessarily harmful for a certain nation? Now, throughout all this, what we have to prove to you is why internal media is more harmful than what external media portrays about a country. So before I move into the rebuttal to the point put forward by the Prime Minister over here, we need to get into some further characterization of what exactly citizen discourse and internal local media looks like. So we need to understand what are the structures and incentives within national media, right, and citizen discourse on behalf of side government over here to not to provide skewed information and misleading facts about a certain nation. So when it comes to citizen discourse, right, for the most part, citizens, they get their information from national media. This looks like TV3 News in Malaysia, for example, TV1, TV2, TV3, and all these things. So the problem here, the first point that we want to put forward from side opposition here is that national media has a tendency to skew information and not exactly give you accurate information on what is actually happening. There are two reasons for this. Number one, national media is government regulated. This means that if they don't want to get shut down and they want to continue to operate and make profit out of their enterprise, they want to make sure that they have government approval and they don't do anything that goes against what the government says. If not, they will get shut down. And number two, they want to paint because they're government regulated, they want to paint their regime in good light. They don't want to show the government doing bad things. All right. The second thing about national media is that they reflect what the people want to hear. They appeal to the masses, but their priority is the comfort of the people. This means that people don't want to hear things that they don't like. They don't want to hear about how badly the country is doing. They don't want to hear about how other countries are progressing better than us, right? They want to feel proud of their nation. They want to hear good things. This means that they won't expose themselves to the wrongs of the country. They won't expose analysts to the past crimes that the country has committed. So this creates an echo chamber, right? A place without any actual debate, a place where there is no questioning of the truth, there's no challenge to what is right and what is wrong. So what this looks like is, in America, for example, if you're a white Christian American, this looks like you denying the bad effects of slavery. This looks like you denying the crimes of the KKK because you're a white American. You want to hear things that sound good to you. So you only listen to things from white American news sources, only what other white Americans give to you, and you don't get information from outside countries, for example, information that condemns you, information that shows you why it's wrong. And so because you don't do that, because you don't get information, right, you only get this skewed, very biased perception of things within the country. So your opinion on this is wrong. So this washes side government's first point over here, which is that internal media has a better understanding of what happens. Because while yes, it's true sometimes that because the government runs the country, so they would have a better perception of things, it is more likely for them to skew this information, for them to provide it in different light for their own sake. All right. So okay, number two, when it comes to external media, the first way in which this is better, the external media in comparison to internal media, for example, the first thing is that they are independent organizations, right? They are not tied to any particular government. They don't have any certain allegiances aside from their political standing. So this looks like Al Jazeera, CNN, or the Times, The Economist, for example. So these organizations, these news sources, they are unbiased. They are more likely to represent the truth. Now, side government might say that these news sources have some, if let's say they have some malicious intent towards a certain government or a regime, they might provide false information or exaggerate certain things. Now, while we concede that this is true, first of all, this is an extreme case. It doesn't happen all the time. We believe that external news sources have a greater tendency to provide you unbiased factual information. All right. So even if they do, number one, exaggerate the data. For example, if they say things like in a certain country, child marriages rates are at 20%, when in truth it might only be 10%. But by exaggerating this data, what they do is they draw light, they draw attention to this problem that this nation faces. And this draws more attention from people within the country and from people overseas to be aware that this is a problem that the country has, even if the information is exaggerated, because let's admit, not yet. Let's admit that external media might do this for the sake of appeal and for sensationalizing of certain things. This is good for the country because this draws attention for them, and measures can be taken to actually solve this problem. Two, if an external source of media is actually extremely critical of a nation's policies, right? This also can bring harm because can benefit a nation in the long run. Let's take Russia, for example, where with the ongoing Ukrainian crisis, Russia has committed some form of crime, some form of harm to other people. So if news networks, external news networks actually target them and are critical of their leaders and what they are doing, this is good because one, it calls out the injustice that is happening. It is unlikely for an external news source to simply call out on a regime, on a state for no particular reason at all. So if they are actually doing that, then it is good. It's drawing attention. It is making sure that the people who are being affected by this, people who are gaining some harm from it, are receiving the attention that they need. I'll take a POI now.
Are you implying that truthfulness isn't necessary in external media's sort of giving information about current situation?
I'm not saying truthfulness is not necessary, but let's compare the way I've characterized both things, internal media and external media. I've already told you that external media is more likely to give you information that is more true in comparison with internal media. One, because they don't have the biases, they don't have to appeal to the people of the nation, they have no allegiance and loyalty to the government of the nation to give you skewed information. And as I said, even if it's not true and it's exaggerated or it's extremely critical, if it causes any harm, I didn't say it's not necessarily not true. I mean, the exaggeration part, yes, if it's exaggerated, but the part where they're critical about the nation and its leaders, it's not that it's not true, it's just that it's very critical and it's really targeting them. And I've already told you how this can bring good things. I'll expand on this in my next point over here, which is the principal case that it is morally unjust, all right, to the most disprivileged people within a community for them to only information from internal news sources to be something that people care about, all right? So people operating in like echo chambers, they don't actually address the issues at hand. So if you're living in a country where you're the majority race, for example, you're not addressing the problems of the minority race, the problems that they face, because you don't have to deal with it. You are living in this echo chamber where it doesn't really matter to you. So no active discourse is taken across different communities. The majority race is only being appealed to the majority race by the internal news networks and the government. And So it doesn't, you don't really have anything to do, you can help with them. So the impacts of this is that minorities' lives become worse politically, socially, and economically. Politically, because if there's nothing being said about the minorities in this nation, then no help can be given to them. They don't get greater representation in politics. They don't, the leaders, the voters in charge, they don't really care about, they don't know about the problems that they're facing, and no help can be done to send them. Socially, these people are shunned because if you have any problems, for example, in the nation, the first person who you're going to blame are the minorities because you don't receive accurate information on the issue. You're only receiving what the government is telling you. The government is telling you that to paint themselves in good light. And the most easiest scapegoat for this matter is going to be the minority races. And that is harmful for them because socially now they are viewed as enemies of the state. And economically, it is the most obvious because if you're politically and socially being targeted like that, economically, you're going to be worse off as well. You're not going to have redistributive policies that help you, that actually cater to your needs and things that can help you. And for all those reasons, side opposition to take today's debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I present the government Deputy Prime Minister, Fatin, to continue the case for their side.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible and visible. Please proceed.
Okay. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, members of the floor, and honorable judges. So what we have seen from the previous speaker, which is from the opposition side, in which the leader of opposition kept pushing the idea that internal media tends to be more biased and tends to be more restricted, especially when delivering news that is supposedly to benefit the people of the nation. However, we believe that this is we believe that it is actually the other way around, because what we understand when it comes to external media compared to internal media, side opposition has made a statement in which they mentioned that by opting for external media, we are not providing skewed misinformation, because national media have the tendency to skew the info to make it biased towards the government. And they're saying that all the media, all the national internal media is government oriented, and therefore people's minds and the media that they consume is controlled by the government. While we in government side believe that this is not the case, because as we know, many countries today practice freedom of speech, especially in Malaysia. We're not only tied to one form of media which is controlled by the government. Malaysia have media outlets of opposition. Are you stating that there is no freedom of speech when it comes to the news, when we also have social media, when we have different medias that people in Malaysia are able to give their own opinions and also provide them with the discourse that they need without being controlled by, without being entirely controlled by the government? Okay. Yes?
We already explained to you that even if these international agencies lie, why then is it harmful if they lie? We've already explained to you that we still reap benefits even if these international agencies are inherently untruthful.
Could you repeat the question slowly, please?
Oh, sorry. Basically, even if these international agencies lie, and we agree that they lie, we already explained to you how this is still beneficial for our side. So why then is it harmful, or why then does it like negate the harms that we push?
Okay, this is because as we know it, external media doesn't as what my Prime Minister has already mentioned, external media does not have the correct idea when it comes to a nation's condition, a nation's social, political, economical views. So how does this harm the nation when external media covers issues regarding the nation? Is because it is shedding a light in which people would look at it in a bad way, in which I will explain in my points later on. So other than that, side opposition also mentioned that we are creating an echo chamber where we only want to hear the good news. Well, this is not the case, because what we understand, since Malaysia actually practices freedom of speech, then people actually come forward and people actually discuss about the good and the bads of Malaysia. We see today a lot of issues being discussed, and believe that that's not do not hide the difficulties. We do not hide the bad part of Malaysia. Instead, we are working together forward and also discussing it further through our own media without the influence of external media. So other than that, side opposition also mentioned about external media is not biased compared to internal media. This is not the case, because external media, especially for example CNN, is tied to the US government, in which they hold the US beliefs and their standards, in which doesn't always go with what other nations believe in. So now moving on to my point, which is external media are inherently biased and have self-interest that can do irreparable damage to the country. Because as we know it, as what my previous speaker already mentioned, that external media doesn't really understand what's going on in the country. And therefore, them covering whatever affairs that has to do with another nation is something that we do not support in government side. The Guardian, okay, so a report made by The Guardian with an interview with former PM that held an anti-government position and accepted the fact that Malaysia was one of the top 10 most corrupt countries in the world, when there is no basis of such statistics, when Malaysia is positioned 62nd on the corruption index. This shows that external media doesn't really check what they receive, what they perceive our country as. Whatever they think our nation is, that is what they're going to portray without proper research. So other than that, external media outlets such as the Western media has also their own agenda in portraying certain views that can help certain parties that benefit from this information, in addition to the fact that Western media outlets are sometimes viewed as credible by the people, so they have the benefit of the doubt. Especially when it comes to Malaysian politics, where there's a case where side opposition seeks for external Western media to bring down the other political party by stating a biased point of view. So a lot of Western media will just accept whatever the opposition says without question, and thus putting the other party in bad light, even if that was never the case. So this, by the end of the day, will influence the people of Malaysia and the way that they're going to elect their own leaders with the views of the Western side, without actually thinking the pros and cons, without actually putting into consideration what was correct and what isn't. They will blindly accept what the Western is putting in there. So when the foreign media are covering for a country like Malaysia, there are probably very few little people who actually know about the country. And they're not going to write about the country all the time either. They're only going to write the country when the news is big enough to make it to the foreign pages. And there, in this case, there's often a black and white way of looking at the country. So by the end of the day, what we understand is that the US press, like the US government, is a corrupt and troubled institution. Corrupt not so much in the sense that it accepts bribe, but in a systemic sense that it fails to do what it claims to do, what it should do, and what society expects it to do. Western media, by the end of the day, isn't really a reliable source, especially when talking about other nations in which they have little to no information of. So with that, I rest my case.
Thank you for that speech. Before we continue, please allow me to make a few clarifications. Should the debater encounter an unstable connection, I may interrupt to ask the debater to turn off their video to ensure a smooth debate. Another thing is that POIs should be done in around 15 seconds, so please speak clearly and concisely to prevent delays in the debate. Now, please welcome the Opposition Deputy Prime Minister, Vignesh, to continue the debate for their side.
Hello, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are audible and visible. Please proceed.
Right. I'll take a POI before the 6 minutes in the event I don't take the POI when you ask it. But yeah, just follow the status quo, which is just ask the POI to me by unmuting yourself. With that being said, beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, I think that government's case is something that is blatantly allowing for the government to ignore the most marginalized in its community, to push narratives and propaganda and inherently lie to the public, to push false narratives to the public. We think on opposition that this is deplorable in of itself, reason that they should lose today's debate because the lies that they perpetrate to the people. Before moving on to the case coming out of opposition as an extension, right? A few quick replies. We is our absolute worst case. Proving this completely washes the arguments coming out from the first two speakers, and the whip can come up here with new material and tell us why they win, because that's unfair. That's how a debate works. So, looking first and foremost to the impacting of today's argument, which is an extension of something that Kavishnu talks about, and that is the entire notion of the history of a nation and how the history of the nation gets washed if we only allow it to operate within the echo chamber of the nation. Panel, Kavishnu already talked to you about how echo chambers are bad and how this entire notion just perpetuates people wanting to feel good about themselves, and therefore you do not talk about the problems pre-existent within society. We tell you that this extends into past war crimes, meaning to say that the Turkish Empire, that Turkey will never teach its people or will never have an understanding that it once committed war crimes in the Ottomans. In the Balkans. This then means that people in general do not talk about the past that they did. This looks like in the United States, where people completely ignore that slavery was a thing, where white people in general ignore the fact that slavery occurred, that segregation occurred, because they want to feel, as characterized by Kavishnu, good of themselves. We tell you then that this is bad because towards the people existent in status quo, they ourselves understand as well that they don't talk about this at all, they don't engage with this, so we can basically assume that they're winning. But even if we assume for the sake of the debate that they want to come up here and say that we don't have minorities in the legislative speech, a preemptive to this is that even if we do not get this end goal, we get two benefits: discourse and international pressure on governments to actually help minorities to stop marginalizing already marginalized communities. And this in of itself is an intrinsic benefit. Moving on to the second argument, which is a practical extension coming out of our case for today. Understand, panel, that this operates on three levels. Number one, understanding the problems that exist on Gov side. Number two, understand how this bleeds onto election cycles. And number three, how the push from international media leads to solvency of these issues. Number one, understand that the problem within on a practical level breaks down into three layers of analysis. Number one, understand that for most people, they will not have an intuitive analysis as to what the entire problem is within a nation, as to its economic structures, as to its political structures, as to what it looks like in terms of how the country operates and how government intersects with private, stuff like that. Understand that this occurs because people have limited knowledge. Gov has to prove to you that there's an active incentive for actors on the ground to actually want to go out and learn about a country intrinsically and not just hinge themselves on the benefit. The probable argument that we get from them is that people love their country and therefore have a deserving right to know this. We tell you then that if you have a love for a nation, even if you have an incentive to dislike, even though this incentive doesn't stand, even if you buy into that incentive, the very fact that a majority of people don't actually have the time to learn about the complex economic and political nuance of each hook and cranny in a nation means that they will not learn. Then this means that they operate by learning things from news outlets, which they do concede. They do concede that media, local media, has a huge influence on their side. But we tell you then, based on the characterization that we already provide that goes uncontested, that national media has an incentive to lie. Meaning to say, the national media, I'll take a POI by the way, before I hit 6. Even though you hit 6, I don't mind taking it. 3, 2, 1. No POI, great. So if you assume then that there's an entire incentive structure for people to lie, this then means that the economic structures of a nation are not properly analyzed on their side. This then means that people do not have an understanding of what their nation operates and looks like. This is bad, panel, because it leads to itself manifesting onto the election cycle, which is my second layer of analysis. When it bleeds onto the election cycle, this means two things, manifest two harms. Number one, bad choices, in that you make bad economic decisions as a country and you lobby for bad decisions. But number two, and I think more importantly, this is something that goes completely unchallenged by their side, it leads to the wrong people getting elected within the nation because of the push for echo chambers. This looks like people like Trump getting elected in the United States, even though his economic policies were not necessarily relevant to the time, because of the fact that this leads to three manifestations of harm within these wrong people getting elected argument. Number one, bad policies. Number two, bad progression in the long run because of the fact, like I said, people like Trump get elected who are inherently bad for the nation, but it just feed onto populist agenda. But number three, this means that in the long run, even if they want to see people can at the very least be happy on their side, they still don't win this, because when your country is literally torn to shreds, you can no longer be happy. And this is what the biggest harm of echo chambers is, which I don't talk about. We tell you that international media is better for all the reasons that we have characterized so far, because they completely negate this based on the characterization that we offer to you throughout our two speeches. For these reasons, panel, there is absolutely no reason that opposition doesn't take today's debate. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the speech. Now, please welcome the government whip, Omar, to continue the debate for their side.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible and visible.
All right. Can I have a minute? I want to set my timer.
All right.
Okay, you can start. Salutations, fellow judges, timekeepers, and members of the parliament. I, as the whip, am given the opportunity to deconstruct and rebut the arguments made alongside providing that to the hall that in this debate, only one side has strongly affirmed their stance in a balanced manner. So the motion for today is that the citizens' view of their own social, political, and economical climate is the only narrative to be accepted as opposed to external portrayal. So the government today today I will show you why the government today has proven to you why internal domestic media is more beneficial to the citizens of their country compared to external media. While to us, the government, we have not been fully convinced that the external media is better for citizens of their own country as opposed to internal media. So now let us move to the points made by my first prime minister. Okay. Internal media has a better understanding of the current socio-economical political situation with depth rather than external media knowing from a surface level. Now, the opposition leader replied by saying that external media, national media is skewed, not accurate information. Government regulates stuff all the time. Now, this is simply not the case. Yes, we have news that are regulated by government, such as TV3, maybe Berita Harian or anything else, bernama. But we have a variety of media, a lot of media, and people tend to refer to these outlets rather than the topics that you have said, such as Suara Keadilan or Harakah or anything else. Even social media, people tend to get their information more towards social media, like how Muda is trying to spread their influence through social media, how the social justice is being spread in social media. And they said that they gave examples regarding white Americans rejecting the history of KKK being what we call harmful towards the minorities. This is simply not the case. With mainstream media now in power, it's become the other way around. They have been socially marginalized. They have not been marginalized, but they have been excessively hated by minorities. You see white people today being portrayed as Karens, and a lot of labels have been given to them, a lot of views, and some of their opinions are not even being taken just because they are white. And how would that appear to be if it's in Malaysia? And in Malaysia, it is now being the case that being Malays, we have a lower standard of people do not refer to us that well as opposed to other people. So it is unbiased. It is biased in a way. And they say that Western media is unbiased. This is simply not the case. A study made by Science Advance has said that Western media is 70%, mainstream media is 7% liberal. So when they say liberals, it will always go against some of the constitutions made in countries, not just in Malaysia. Well, we have our constitution, but also in other countries. They have their own constitution, their own rights. Not now. And then they said stuff about we blatantly ignore the minorities. We blatantly ignore problems that minorities have hold on to, such as maybe 90-10 ratio or stuff like that. We don't. They haven't given any examples. But if they value the problems of the minorities, should they also value the problems of the majority? If a nation values a problem of the minority without with neglecting the majority, it will cause discourse. Look at in Iraq. Look at in Iraq and Libya. People said that they had had chemical weapons. Mainstream media portrayed them as the bad guys, but the majority of the people support him. Only a significant few who said that was true, and it wasn't true. And look what happened to in Libya. They were, in the words of, ironically, Donald Trump, they were safe from terrorists. They were stable. They had food, they had water. Now it's a breeding ground of terrorism. So how would you explain that if we only refer to mainstream media? And now, moving on to my DPM's point, they said that internet media is unbiased. Like I said before, we do not have only one source of information. Rather, we have a lot of sources of media, such as, like I said before, Harakah Daily, or Suara Keadilan, or like the Selangor thing, I forgot what it was. And they said that creating an echo chamber is not, it will create an echo chamber which will harm, especially the marginalized communities in Malaysia.
Why?
Now, no, sorry. No, this may be true in some cases, but nowadays people have been trying to accept every idea, even from minorities. We do not discuss it in a echo chamber anymore. We do not hide the background of Malaysia. But however, we take upon every single, not just the minorities, but also the majority who is significant in maintaining stability and freedom and justice in Malaysia. Now, the deputy opposition leader said that the government media is spreading lies, blatant lies. That is, we differentiate freedom of speech from propaganda. People can differentiate propaganda from freedom of speech. Intelligent people can, at least. Even if they say that even if external media is bad, it benefits the nation. How? They address the simple minority, simple nuance, very like something like, how can Malaysia still don't use pronouns in a negative in mainstream, like pronouns like she, he, and something like that, in ways that the main problem in the nation is food, water, security, stability is still not being addressed, but they still address those hyper nuances, those ideas that the mainstream are not, the public are not willing to think, not caring about at the moment. They want things that are actually what we call relevant to them, not just this small stuff. Now, lastly, I want to say that the government has maintained their position time and time again, caring for not just the minorities, but the whole of the people by only accepting internal media and such. I will add, my last quote is that not every nation is America, but not everyone wants to be America. I rest my case.
Thank you for that speech. Amar, please mute yourself. Thank you. Now, please welcome the opposition whip, Arif, to continue the debate for their side.
Yeah, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are. Please proceed.
Okay, panel. The 10 equity violations from speech aside, here's exactly why we think side opposition takes this debate over government. Now, what exactly can this debate be boiled down to? Basically, side government has to prove 3 things in order to win this debate. It is not enough for side government to prove that the citizens and their own views should be, the citizens to form their own views from internal media should be good alone. It's not enough, because they have to prove exactly why external media existing as a player in this is harmful, and exactly, even if it is biased towards a certain degree and critical, exactly why is that disbeneficial and why are the impacts of that negative to the country in and of itself. Now, government fails to prove all 3 burdens, and here's why. On the front of external media being bad in general, what side government has pushed time and time again is that outside views are irrelevant because they don't understand the whole concept and they barely scratch the surface of knowing what goes on in the country. Now, we the opposition do concede that obviously, it's obvious that internal media will know to a greater extent than outside media. However, we have proven exactly the incentive structure why this doesn't matter at all, because with inside media, they may know what's going on because it comes from the government and the government runs the country. So surely they know what's going on. But we have proved exactly why governments are not only less likely to, but incentivized not to tell the whole truth, because a lot of the times the truth hurts and it's not in good light to portray everything. And these governments obviously want to stay in power, want to say that their country is the best country in the world, and therefore they are more incentivized to actually ban any sort of critical news or news that paints them in bad light. Whereas outside external sources, as characterized by my opposition leader, show that they have no allegiances to any countries. What side government fails to understand is that these external medias are not national medias of other countries. They're actually independent medias that have their own structures that aren't tied to US, aren't tied to China. Like, we're not talking about Fox News here. We're talking about actual reputable sources that have journalistic integrity. Therefore, they don't have bias, or at least a minimal degree of bias as compared to internal media. This is further put forward by examples given by the side government, saying how an example is that, oh, if we take external media into consideration, such as like the American ones, they'll be biased on the American side and say bad things about Malaysia, take for example. But even in that, they've already proven that the American media, if it's nationalized, is biased towards Americans. So how can they prove that Malaysia's internal media won't be biased towards Malaysians as well? So they've just proven that internal medias are biased towards their own countries, thereby proving our own point. Moving on to the impacts exactly, we have outlined exactly why, even if bias exists on our external media, why it's a good thing because of check and balance. What our deputy opposition leaders mentioned is exactly that these things break echo chambers, which allow discourse to occur. This looks like external pressure from other countries, from other people pushing these governments to change and to help the minorities, which is a scope that side government has not touched at all, because minorities, even though by name a minority, are still a major player within this debate as a stakeholder. In fact, they are the biggest stakeholder of this debate because we have proven them to be the most vulnerable and to have the most at stake, because they have no opt-out option. They are the minorities. Therefore, whatever happens here impacts them. And if you negate these minorities, it's already harmful on the government side. And this is further accentuated by the fact that government seems to misunderstand exactly to what extent discourse can happen, because what government seems to have put forward is this weird argument that in America, suddenly the narrative has changed. Instead of white people being good, is that white people are bad and black people are the ones with all the power. Now, whether or not that's true or it warrants an equity violation, that's not my argument. But the whole point is it doesn't change anything. It's just a different narrative. And even government thinks that that's a biased narrative. So you're agreeing that America's internal media still has a biased narrative. It may be a different one from before, but it's still a biased narrative to some degree. So even it still proves the point that internal media is biased and it allows no actual change. It may be change in color, but there's actual no change to improve the country in general. So now that's exactly why government has failed to prove these three burdens, and therefore they have already lost this debate within their own arguments. But moving on to why OP wins this debate is because all the burdens that OP has to prove is that opposition does not have to prove why internal media is in and of itself bad, because whatever benefits reaped from internal media can be sown on our side as well, because we don't exclude internal media. It's a part of our equation. So all we have to do is prove exactly why external media is good and why it can bring better impacts. Now, we've already outlined the incentives to why external media is good in and of itself by saying that there's no bias, by characterization that it tries the best to get the truth. In the worst case scenario, why we still win, because even if these media are so biased or so like exaggerative, it still helps as a check and balance to attack any form of internalized structures that won't change. Now, what does this look like? This looks like allowing comprehensive awareness. It allows, because by virtue, external media companies obviously have a wider range over the world. Internal medias can only affect to the greatest extent its own citizens, but external media is allowed to share and spread information as far as possible. So what does this look like? This looks like people in America knowing about what's going on in South Africa, people in Germany knowing what's going on in Thailand. So this allows external pressure as a player, as an exclusive player in our side of the world, because with this external pressure, this is how you allow for social changes to occur. Do you think social movements would be as effective as they were without international support? No. So that's why it's an exclusive benefit on opposition side that we get this external pressure to change governments, to change things, because without this external pressure and only leaving it to internal things, that basically makes it into a cycle in which, as already explained by the opposition, but I will further lead into it, is that it allows these election cycles to just keep on picking the wrong people or the people who are already in power just to consolidate their power even more, because there's no actual body to challenge them other than the people themselves. Now, so this debate boils down to weighing exactly who best initiates change and has the best utility, which we've already proven that on our side, we can initiate the most change by virtue of external pressure, and therefore it leads to more structural change. So that's why we win on that metric. The second metric is exactly who protects minorities the most. Now, side government has even failed to address minorities at all. So on that alone, it's a wash, and that we have already proven, outlined why we managed to help, if not all minorities, at least a greater extent of minorities. And the last thing we have to prove is exactly why the impacts can happen and the likelihood with the incentives. And we already proved that internal media is more incentivized to protect the image of their own country as a great nation rather than external medias who are more open to critical lens. So basically, this debate has been lost by the government because they fail to take into consideration that the average person is not holistic and does not understand every aspect of life. Even when government said that, like, some people are intelligent and can discern propaganda from news. Well, whether or not that's true, even government concedes it's some people, but it's not everyone. Therefore, on opposition side, we best protect this everyone, and we address exactly why external media can help change countries as a whole and protect minorities. With that, I rest my case.
Thank you. Now that we have heard all the three speakers from both teams, there will be 3 minutes allocated for the preparation of the reply speech, starting now. The time of 3 minutes has ended. I shall now invite the opposition team's second speaker, Vignesh, to make their reply speech.
Nice. Am I visible and audible?
Yes, you are. Please proceed.
Cool. I'm beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, to quote my opposition with before actually getting into the analysis of this debate, the 10 equity violations that come out from side government aside, and the fact that I would have assumed that this is a white nationalist propaganda outlet if I didn't know that this was a debate, let's still see, even if we ignore this entire problem with their case, why we still win. Okay, so first and foremost, let's look at the burden that side government pushes to you. Side government pushes to you a fairly inconsistent burden, and I think that the panel should note this, in that they talk first and foremost that external media is bad, number one, because it is irrelevant, but number two, because they do not understand it. They then say that this is the burden that they want to push to prove to us that these medias are bad, although that there is tension in the case later on, where they contradict themselves by saying that, well, Western media doesn't support Westerners as well, in that they discriminate against white people. That aside, looking at that burden, the second burden then is that they can preserve the integrity of the news outlets within local agencies, meaning to say that it is not susceptible to the harm that we want to push. Op then says two burdens. One, a principal outcome burden, in proving that even if all of this is true, and even if we assume the best argument coming out of Gov, which is people want to be happy, this is principally wrong because you owe something to the minorities within your community that you have disprivileged for so long. The second then that we run is the practical outcomes and how this bleeds onto election cycles. We tell you then, panel, that a lot of this goes uncontested with government, meaning to say that these are externalities that already draw us away from Gov in a large margin in today's debate. But just analyzing that in which is contested in today's debate. That is to say, whether or not external media is bad. If we prove this, because of the fact that this is the main thing coming out of Gov's case, that external media is bad, and by the laws of debate in which we assume that in which is first is what is implied by side government, meaning to say the first characterization of external media is to be accepted, let's look at what that means before we get into why Gov just inherently makes them lose the case even more. But first and foremost, looking into this entire narrative, we tell you then that based on the analysis that they give you, they just claim that this occurs because there's a lack of understanding. They then make a second claim that people on the ground are smart and will not be susceptible to the local media which is biased, to the local media which lies, meaning they do concede the local media does have an incentive to lie. Panel, we tell you then that it must be weighed against what opposition says. Opposition says in response to the psychological analysis of how people act, in that people are not smart. We see not that smart. We see this in the leader of opposition speech when he says that more often than not, you want to believe in the best things, meaning you inherently buy into echo chambers, you inherently buy into lies, you inherently buy into what is best for you because you don't want to face the harsh past of what you did. DLO then comes out and say, even if people want to be the best because they love the nation and they have some intuitive want to learn, they don't have the time, meaning to say more often than not, they are influenced by the local news agencies. This goes uncontested. We think that on this clash, we win the debate. But moving onto this entire analysis that they want to push until the very end of the case as to how these news agencies are bad. Panel, we've already explained to you right from the get-go, we are not trying to fiat this debate or trying to prove to you that in today's debate, we are saying international agencies are good. We are saying that the inherent bias of media exists on both sides, be it local or international agencies. The delta then that we push, the difference then that we push is that these international agencies, even when they have an incentive to lie, that incentive is more beneficial than the incentives that they want to push. And given the analysis that we tell you on how we tell you that how this incentive manifests itself onto the nation, how it brings benefit for the nation, we think that we win on this clash as compared to whatever claims that come out from government, which have no harm or impact analysis, meaning to say that I can't even weigh it in this debate. But moving on then into this entire case coming out of GovWeb, the fact that it creates huge amount of tensions aside, this is problematic because even if we charitably analyze it, we say then that you making a claim that one people are marginalized, which is intuitively untrue, number one, but number two, still falls to the fallacy of the debate that we say, regardless of the bias of international media, it still exists as a great balance of power to deter nations from lying, to deter nations from marginalizing the marginalized in your community. Panel, we are the side that protects the marginalized community. We are the side that actually stops lies. We are the side that actually makes the nation better in the long run. Panel, please vote for the side that is not some QAnon offspring. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon the government's team's second speaker, Fatin, to present their reply speech.
Greetings, members of the floor. So, as of how we see the debate has progressed, you already. Okay, sorry. As how we've seen how the opposition has brought out their case, in which we noticed that side opposition did not engage when it comes to the idea where internal media actually works. Like what my previous speaker has mentioned, with the case of Lee Kuan Yew, people of Singapore are actually happy with the current party and how they operate Singapore. Yet the external media portrays Lee Kuan Yew as a dictator, and therefore, how when external media is flawed and when internal media actually works, the side opposition did not touch on that. So now let's look at both of the worlds. What is side opposition opting for? What is the world that they're giving to us? Is that they're opting for external media to portray another nation's social, political, and economical climate or history, which basically translates to giving full trust and power to external media to control how other people perceives things about a certain nation. They're giving power to manipulate what the world thinks about that certain nation, which by the end of the day makes the nation that is portrayed to lose their own identity and for people to have bad impression of them. Opposition is saying that other countries should project their own views on others instead of those nations in particular to stand for themselves. While inside government, we're giving the absolute right of representation by the nation's own people, because we believe that internal views are more grounded through freedom of speech and the collective views of our people. Side opposition had the burden to prove that the narrative provided by external media is better for the citizens of the country rather than their own internal media. But we're saying that they did not fulfill their burden of truth, their burden of proof, because we believe that since what my previous speaker already mentioned is that external media does more harm than good, in which they tend to exaggerate to the point that the exaggeration becomes a lie. This is absent when it comes to internal media because as we know it, we have freedom of speech. It is not centralized by a certain government, and therefore, this is the society within that nation themselves have the discourse to themselves, and therefore, we believe that this is not an issue when it comes to discussion, and the people and the nations and the society within a nation, there's enough people for the country to move forward that the foreign media's interpretation is irrelevant in this case. Other than that, they also touched regarding the minorities. Yes, it is undeniable that minorities are most vulnerable in this issue. But then we believe that external media doesn't really play that big of a role when it comes to minorities. It does not help minorities in the long run. Because why? Because when it comes to internal media, we cater for minorities as well, because internal media covers the bad news too. They shed light to existing problems too. But in this case, they are actual problems with actual facts instead of lies, instead of things that are fabricated by the external news. This, by the end of the day, would actually put a light to the actual problem instead of creating problems from something that doesn't exist. So with that, side government stands on the side of providing news and narrative relevant to the citizens and population's concern rather than a foreign country agenda. Because we believe that the freedom of speech, that the rights towards portrayal of the nation lies in the nation's own society, in the nation's own people. With that, I urge you to side with side government as we provide the people of the nation to have their own identity and to fight for their own rights in the long run. With that, I thank you.
Thank you for the reply speech. We have now come to the end of the debate. Adjudicators may go into their breakout rooms to deliberate. Debaters, please wait in the meeting. The adjudicators have a verdict. Let us welcome them back to give our debaters comments.
Should I start now?
Yes, you may.
All right. I will begin with the verdict, and then I will give general feedbacks of the whole debate. And then after that, I will give general feedbacks for each side of the House. Okay? So it was a unanimous decision of 3-0, and the verdict went to side opposition, which is Sunway. Okay? Congrats. Okay. So now moving on to the feedback, right? Yeah, general feedback and clashes. A minute. Sides. So many times I was like, okay, yes, keep going. And it just stopped. And I was like, oh no. And there was a lot of, overall, I'll get into it in more detail. But I think there was a lot of missed opportunities that could have helped both sides immensely and like almost could have overturned the result of this debate as a whole. Okay. So there are four main things I want to talk about in this debate, right? Just generally. First of all, it was very difficult for me, especially throughout this debate, because both sides didn't like tell me specifically who was the stakeholder in this debate. Who exactly are you trying to help, right? Because this debate just ended up being like a constant fight between internal or external, right? And I'm like, okay, fine. Even if you say like for example, internal is like better, right? So how does this help? Who is this helping, right? Because obviously you have to point out that it is based on the actual citizens of the people. Which side you have to like come up and say which side better benefits the citizens of the people. This side wins the debate. Okay, because there were a lot of times where some of you just didn't clarify. Oh, you just said it's better for the people, and I'm thinking, which people? People overseas, people who are writing the news, people the government, or people the citizens. You know, so it's hard for me to like understand how exactly your impact is going to materialize and whatnot, right? Okay, now the second thing I want to talk about is that the internal and external clash that happened all through 8 speakers is a completely unnecessary clash, and like it's just a waste of time. Okay, from the moment PM and LO spoke, right, I would have really appreciated if both of you just took the bullets, right? Both of you agree that internal and external have lies. You cannot want to fight saying which side is more honest, because the fact is both sides have a level of dishonesty. So you have to debate on which side would be better to have that dishonesty. Would you rather be lied to by external factors or by internal factors? That is what the debate should be about. Because if your whole case is dependent upon your preferred media being 100% honest, then there's no way your impacts are going to materialize in the real world, right? And you have to tell me how exactly if you want to claim it's honest, you have to tell me exactly how it is honest, which is already hard to prove, right? And secondly, you have to tell me like, if it's dishonest, like how would it benefit, right? And obviously, we know that only happened on opposition side, and we'll get to that, right? So the third problem I had was with the characterization, right, coming from Gov, because I understand that you guys want to argue for internal media, right? But it was like throughout the whole debate, I kept like asking myself, okay, what exactly does internal media mean, right? Because does it mean government or controlled media only, or is it any media that is coming out from that country itself, right? Because most of the examples you brought, like you said, you had alternatives, right? It's not just about TV3, for example, right? If we're putting it in Malaysia's case, right? Like you said, there we have other sources. We have Suara Keadilan, we have Haraka. But if I'm to understand that internal means government control, then Suara Keadilan and Haraka are external media. So you have to properly set your stance. Like, tell me, what do this internal media look like? What does external media look like? So it was only like up to the end of the debate when I noticed opposition stated that their definition for external media is international media. So then, okay, now I have to assume that every internal media is the non-international media, right? Then that is internal. Okay, so I would have really appreciated if like both sides told me specifically what is this, what is that, okay? And now the last thing I want to talk about, which is a good thing, which is that I really like that there was like actual proper engagement coming from both sides. There were a lot of POIs, and that is more than welcome, right? Okay, now I'll talk about the clashes, right? So although like in that debate, the only clash that was like, I guess you could say an effective clash that was actually like debating about was like internal media and external media. And that is like besides the point of this debate, okay? For example, because honestly, in my opinion, I think you don't have to advocate for internal media as much, right? All you have to say is that what this looks like is whether you would rather have whatever your thoughts be solely dependent on what other people think, what other countries think, or not, right? So you have to say that we don't care if external media wants to like say bad things about our country, bad things about our leader, if we don't want to accept it, right? So it doesn't matter what external media says, as long as we know what we think, we believe in what we think, then that's far better, right? And opposition, you have to say that no matter what happens, people have to concede to what other people think. So if external media says that your leader is a dictator, you have to believe that your leader is a dictator. So that is what the debate should be about, okay? It's not just who gets to share information to other people, okay? That is like the first part. That's not like the main part, okay? It doesn't matter how to get information, okay? So the actual clashes that the three of us, the adjudicators, decided to, how do you say, decide the winner, right? There's only three main clashes, which the first one was which side better caters to the citizens and side benefit, especially for which side actually helps the minorities, which side brings better development into the country, like for future development, future progress, like structural developments and whatnot. And thirdly, which side is able to actually like spark change, right? So when we actually thought about it and we came to the conclusion that all of these three clashes were won dependently on opposition, which is why we ended up giving them the win, right? So now I'll just go very quickly about the good and bad for government and opposition, right? So we'll start with opposition, right? The good things that I liked about your side is that you had good analysis from all three speakers. It was very nice. That was like my first level, my second level. It was very clear. I liked your arguments about how I like that you preempted their impacts for government. You knew what their case was supposed to be like, and you just completely dismantled it before they could even say it, right? Because you managed to prove to them that even if the citizens were better off inside government, which is what they should have been advocating for, right? You tell you that it would be in the long run, right? They tell you told them that it would be a downward spiral. And I think that was very important for your case. And I also thought that you guys actually took the time to fight for the minorities. You provided safety net, like you even said, even if external media is false, we are still better off. You didn't push them, and you kept burden pushing them to give an incentive. Why would external media lie? Why you kept pushing them for every speaker, which is good. And you also managed to cater for every aspect, social, political, economical, which was very nice. However, the bad things I noticed was that, first of all three speakers exceeded time, and it was by a lot, because it should be maximum like 15 seconds over, but you guys, I think majority of you went past 30 seconds, which is far too long. And furthermore, you guys missed the opportunity, right? There's also a lot of missed opportunities coming from opposition, because like I said, if you could have countered them by saying that Gov's alternatives are external media, then you've completely destroyed their case, right? But the very minor details, but you could have completely just knocked them out. That's what I'm saying. Okay, now moving on to Gov. We thought that you brought good examples to the case. It was very clear examples. You've also given them proper burden pushing. And I particularly liked the reply speech, because if I'm honest, it was only until Gov reply that I actually was able to like connect the dots between your whole speech. Even though it is quite late, but I'm very thankful that Gov reply actually managed to give some sort of clarity. The problems with Gov were there were not enough analysis. There was not enough how exactly you would get your impacts that you want. And the examples you provided were how do I say this, like one-liners, right? You didn't exactly like extend on these examples. You didn't tell me why exactly it is important that people refuse to believe that their Singaporean leader is a dictator. So I think if you actually knew how to manipulate your examples, it could have gone in your favor a lot better. That is all I have to say. I would like to call upon any of the other adjudicators if they would like to add on. Last thing for oral adjudication, I believe I can chat. Okay, I'll just put my Instagram, I guess. That's a good place. Yeah, but I'll call upon the other adjudicators if they have anything to say.
Personally, I give my marks to the opposition team because they have given various factors which touched on the worldwide perspective, catering onto the international pressure mostly. However, the government, the opposition team should highlight the part where the government must prove that people should really learn about the nation. When you mentioned that apparently government only wants to know good things about the nation, I didn't really understood that. So even like to reiterate what the opposition said, even though the country is being happy because the international media gives you the good points, but the country is literally crumbling. That I think I need a bit of clarification. But also for the government part, I think that they need to address something different. It's still the main point because it's global, but however, they brought it a little bit too late into the event, the debate. But that's pretty much it. Thank you. I'll pass it on to the next adjudicator.
Sorry. I think whatever our chair has said is very clear, all his judgments that he's given. I just like to bring up one thing that I thought piqued my interest the most was the fact that you guys kept bouncing off each other and kept rebutting the same thing. One argument, which was the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, Alo brought up the fact that even though external medias will give you exaggerated information, by doing this, they'll still draw attention to the problem. But the problem that Gov did was they kept rebutting this exact problem. They kept saying like, external media will give us skewed information. They'll give us issues. They'll give us exaggerated data that actually has no claim. But the point is that OP already said that even though there is exaggerated data, it will draw attention, which will draw attention globally and not just to the country. So it will call out injustice at the end of the day. And I think that was the main problem that Gov did, because you guys kept bouncing back between the LO and the DPM. And then in the middle of the DLO speech, there was also a POI that literally reinforced that Gov gave a POI that literally reinforced the opposition's argument. So other than that, the arguments were pretty solid. The examples were really well done. Yeah, so but the main reason was because of that, for me personally. Thank
you. Any other comments from the adjudicators? None? All right. Thank you for the comments, adjudicators. This debate has come to a close. Debaters and staff, you can be dismissed. Congratulations to the debaters, and to the ones who lost, try harder next time. To the audience members, I hope everyone had a wonderful time spectating this morning's round of debates. Please tune back in at 2 p.m. for the closing ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you.